People are making plenty of big statements about this player that Georgia will have this season, but I want to talk about it more so in the form of a question and get down to the bottom of it. I'm talking about Zachariah Branch, the transfer wide receiver that Georgia brought in from USC. The lowdown on Branch is he's low to the ground, about 5'9", 5'10", not very heavy, but he's a very explosive football player, former five-star prospect from the 2023 class, so he's entering year 3 in college and doesn't have a ton of production at USC, but certainly passes the eye test in terms of a dynamic offensive weapon and a dynamic special teams weapon, and we could talk about that too. People are calling him an X factor. People are calling him the missing piece to Georgia's offense. People are saying he's different. I've seen a good bit with my own eyes of Zachariah Branch at this point, and I'm sitting here to have an open conversation from all angles about it. Is he Georgia's missing piece on offense? Because this is a Georgia offense that's changing a lot this offseason. It's not just like, hey, we're returning all this talent. Hey, look, if you're Georgia, hey, look, we got this guy, this guy, this guy. All you had to do is plug in Zachariah Branch. So calling him the missing piece may be a little drastic, but is he a missing piece in terms of bringing explosion back to the offense? Maybe that's a better way to put it. Ryan Curley from Dawg Post. Talking about Zachariah Branch. Was one of the most sought-after players in the transfer portal. We saw Kirby go and dip into the transfer portal more than he and the staff have while he's been at Georgia. Excuse me. And I think that on paper, this was their biggest win, was going and getting Branch. And why? Well, Georgia has a handful of issues from a year ago, and Branch solves them, right? On paper, he solves them. They needed explosiveness in the offense. That's what Zachariah Branch is. I made this comparison in a story on dogpost.com in the last week. You should go and check it out. But I made this comparison. I said, think in terms of athletes, think of a blend of Dominic Lovett and Arian Smith. That's Zachariah Branch. The speed with the quick twitch and the explosion. That's kind of what you get. And better hands. The other part is Georgia. The pass catchers, they let the offense down last year. The offense as a whole was all over the place, right? Dysfunctional at moments, dysfunctional for halves, inconsistent. It would have times of explosion and it would have times where it just really stalled, but part of that is because of drop passes, and those were momentum killers. They were drive killers. So they brought in multiple receivers, Branch being one of them, to help make that situation better. And then in terms of special teams, he is immediately he's Georgia's return guy, right? That's kind of what you need to hear about that. Return to touchdown in the form of a punt and a kickoff return during that 2023 season, his true freshman season. So I'm sitting here and I'm saying all of these great things about Zachariah Branch. He's more explosive than the players Georgia had last year, right? They brought him in to be a primary weapon. Georgia didn't have a primary weapon last season. It really was Arian Smith in terms of yardage, but there really wasn't a primary weapon. Georgia had 2 of them and 3 of them in the previous years. They had Bowers, they had McConkey, they had A.D. Mitchell. They had guys like that. So that's another reason why Branch was brought in to Athens. So, like I said, why am I questioning it? What is my question about it? Well, not a lot of production at USC. And this guy is small, right? So I told you I want to attack this at every angle when we're talking about it. We're not just going to sit here and just praise him, right? In 23, 31 catches, 320 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He is a true freshman in an offense that Lincoln Riley had that featured a lot of weapons, and it featured Heisman winner Caleb Williams and one of the most talented quarterbacks we've seen recently. And as a true freshman, not a ton of production, but it was there. 99 rush attempts, 70 yards, and a touchdown, so he added that on the ground. He followed that up. 2024, USC took a step back from what it was in 2023, and you had 500 yards, 47 catches, and a touchdown, so those numbers are a little bit better. They didn't use him as much in the returning and run game. but he was not a big time weapon for them. He, was a little bit toolsy. And so my question is, now he gets brought into a Georgia offense that's really not known for these go-to weapons. Bowers was kind of an anomaly. It's been the running backs in the past that have been the dominant factors in Georgia's offense, but receivers, no. I mean, George Pickens had a really good 2019. Wims, Jeremiah Holloman had good years, Mecole Hardman, but none of these guys were marquee, bona fide number one weapons really outside of Brock Bowers. So I don't necessarily think that Branch is just going to be that, especially in a Georgia offense that, let's face it, and especially with Bobo and all that, don't you need to see a little bit of it to believe it? Don't you need to see how they're going to use some of these guys to say confidently, yeah, I think that he's going to have a really explosive year? The thing is, Georgia brought in a ton of pieces. They brought in Noah Thomas. They get Kobe Young back. I think that younger guys like Sakovi White and Jeremy Bell are going to be fighting for playing time. Dylan Bell is still on the team. They've got multiple tight ends that are going to be used a good bit in Oscar Delp and Lawson Lucky. To me, I honestly do think that Branch has star potential. I do think that as a talent, he is phenomenal. All of this evidence kind of points towards he is not going to be like this 900-yard receiver, 1,000-yard receiver. I don't know if that's the expectation. He's certainly going to be an X factor in this Georgia offense and bring a different element. But I don't think that he was brought over to just be this star that's going to get 10 catches a game and 100 yards, right, like 5 or 6 times throughout the season. I mean, at G-Day, he was fighting through an injury a little bit, but you saw them really spread the ball around. And Branch had like 2 targets, and one of them was a very exceptional catch on a back shoulder throw from Gunnar Stockton on a slot fade route where Gunnar underthrew the ball a little bit, and Branch, his small stature, makes a really good play on the ball and catches it. So he showed us big playability. He showed that in the punt return game as G-Day as well, as he shifted through a lot of Georgia's punt team defense. So he's got the explosiveness and the talent in the eye test. What he doesn't have is the production at USC the first 2 years in a high-powered offense, which is fine when you're a younger player and you're buried on the depth chart to an extent, and their offense gets more dysfunctional as time goes on, right? Because that's what happened at USC. But I think it's more likely that he's like this toolsy player that Georgia uses now, that he'll be out there a lot. But, if you look at Georgia's stats, and Georgia threw the ball a ton. They threw the ball more than they ever had in 2024, and you get 600 yards from Dominic Lovett, 466 yards from Dylan Bell, 817 yards from Arian Smith, right? So I don't expect something more than that necessarily. So what I'd say to Branch in that regard is, hey, man, prove me wrong, but I'm thinking they've got London Humphreys too. They've got running backs they're going to feed. They've got a different style of quarterback this coming season. Gunnar Stockton is a dual threat. They're going to use Gunnar Stockton's legs. That's going to dip into the production. I don't think that they're going to sit back and drop back and air it out as much as they did, like deep, as they did with Carson Beck. Why? Gunnar Stockton's a really good quarterback. He's got a lot of talent. Don't know that he's quite as talented as Beck was. Don't know if he, what is he compared to Stetson Bennett? Stetson Bennett showed that he was a real gamer, had weapons around him, but that's kind of the point. I think that Georgia's got a ton of weapons. I think Zachariah Branch makes this team better. I don't know that he's necessarily going to be this gigantic superstar, but I do think he does bring a new element to Georgia's offense that it didn't have, and it should be more explosive, and part of that is because of Branch. Kind of my general take on that. I wanted to attack it from different angles. Let me know what you think Zachariah Branch is going to be in Georgia's offense this coming season, and thank you for watching.